and his mechanic Tim Hyatt was there. He didn't bring the rest of the mechanics, so my good friends of Eddie, and we banged out a few songs and cheered on and celebrated Eddie in the way that he would have loved it.
I could see out the cook, because we were still just finishing presentation, and I could see it on the big screen, and there was a crowd that was bigger than there was there for Fatboy Slim, Sam Fender, and Ray combined. I think. I mean, it was a sea of people, and all I could see was Herbert banging a chain with a spanner right now at the corner of my eye.
Yes,
that's my moment. I only just caught a glimpse of it.
Bless him. He wanted to join it, and in the original gig, they were playing a tambourine or a triangle or whatever they could find, and there wasn't anything there. I bought my boron for someone. I think Eddie Irvine ended up on that one. But Johnny looked around behind the stage, and he found an adjustable spanner and a bit of scaffolding. Basically, that was his, and he banged it for about half an hour, and then once he told me afterwards he'd missed and he hit his hand, so he had this really big bruise on his hand because he'd whacked with an adjustable spanner. But God bless him, he's irrepressible, old Johnny, and he just joined in the spirit, and they all did, and it was great fun, and the sun was shining. As you say, the crowd was huge. But I think they might have been there to see Lando after the race and all the drivers who were coming on stage after us. But so we stole the audience.
I also saw Johnny's daughter and his two grandkids. They were sat in McLaren, and he apparently used to, we all know he used to stay in an old horse box when he didn't he, to the British Grand Prix. There were all these lovely motorhomes, and Johnny would be in a horse box with a bit of hay in the bottom. But he sold it. He sold it, apparently. So there we go.
Yeah, so there's plenty of hay there. They cut the grass before the race, so he could have. He wasn't short of food.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. Should we get into it then? Let's get into the major talking point and the 10-second penalty for Oscar Piastri, which cost him. It built up a good lead. What was it, 14 seconds at some point? Safety car infringement in the run up to Stowe, just as it was confirmed the safety car was coming in at the end of lap 21. He slammed on the brakes. He went from 135 miles per hour to 32 miles per hour. And, Max went past him. I mean, I think he was accelerating at the time, so it kind of made things look a little bit more serious than they were. The difference between this one is that it was 60 psi of brake pressure that Oscar Piastri put on, 30 psi that George Russell put on back in Canada. If you're pounding the brakes, we understand it's about 130 to 140, Zach told us after the race. But 10 seconds, I think most people are saying he was banged to rights. Crofty, what's your thoughts on it?
Look, this was my moment of the weekend. Moments could be good or bad, but this changed the destiny of the race. And I think Oscar more than likely would have gone on to win the race had it not been for this moment. Now, he was a bit unlucky in that the safety car lights went off quite late in the lap and was called in quite late. And he was trying to warm up his brakes at that phase. But you can't drive erratically, and I think he was banged to rights, even though, and I think another moment here, this is the first time we've seen Oscar really not lose his cool necessarily, but start to show some emotion and visibly very angry after the race and trying to hold his thoughts in. As he said, I don't want to say too much because I might get in trouble. He'd done this before in the race, and I think race control were already onto him a little bit in terms of what he was doing at a safety car restart. I remember back to Spain, where he very much aggressively slowed down the pack there to his benefit and managed to cool down Max's tyres to the extent that Max had a big moment when we got going again. And I can see why he was doing it. But in those conditions, with that visibility and that spray, you can't put the anchors on in the way he did. And that's why he got the penalty. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, hang on a minute, George Russell did exactly the same thing in Canada behind the safety car, and he didn't get a penalty at all. Well, he didn't, because he didn't do exactly the same thing. He didn't apply the brakes quite so heavily. He didn't slow down quite so much. And there was a big difference between the speeds and the slowing down, the stopping that Oscar did and George did. It's the concertina effect that it then causes as well. Nico Hulkenberg saying that he got caught out a bit. He talked to Lando in the cool-down room. But it did change the course of this race. It did decide, I think, this race, although, we'll never know whether Lando would have had the opportunity to get past or not. And it has absolutely thrown wide open this Drivers' Championship once again. And we've narrowed it down to a very small distance between the two drivers going into part two.
David, are you
his seat because of his father, and that he will ultimately hold the team back from its championship aspirations. Speaking to Jake Humphrey as part of Aston Martin's Unearth Your Greatness series on YouTube, Stroll addressed the often extreme criticism he receives, saying, "I like to see it as just noise. If I buy into it, it bothers me, for sure, but that's where I am fortunate. I have good people around me that I love, that I trust, and I put my attention and value their opinions. I try and live in my world, not the world in that sense. There's always going to be criticism. People are very short-minded. You have a couple of good races, you're great. You have a couple of bad ones, you suck. That's never going to change. That's why being surrounded by important people and valuing the opinion of people that you care about, that you value, that you really know their opinion, is what matters. Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from." Lawrence Stroll has plowed significant investment into the Aston Martin team, transforming the facilities at its Silverstone base, bringing Adrian Newey on board and striking a deal with Honda for a Works Power Unit partnership for the 2026 season. However, the team is currently struggling and sits a lowly 7th in the current campaign's constructor standings. Having finished 5th the past 2 years. In 2025, it is the only team in the top 8 yet to reach the podium, a far cry from Alonso clinching 6th in the opening 8 rounds of 2023. With F1's power unit and chassis overhaul looming ahead of next term, Stroll highlighted how he has used the difficulties of an underwhelming campaign to develop, as Aston Martin readies itself to hopefully jump back up the pecking order. "That's the thing," the 26-year-old said. "We can talk about the podium and the poles, but let's talk about the losses. I think that's where you learn the most about yourself and to grow from those tough moments. I think that's where you really grow as a person, as an athlete, driver, from those struggles, from those hard days. What can you learn from it? How can you come back next week and be better?" We all love the highs. We all love the champagne celebrations. But it's really in those hard moments, those tough times, that we learn the most about ourselves and we grow. Join Racing News 365's Ian Parks, Sam Coop, and Nick Golding as they look back at last weekend's Singapore Grand Prix. Lando Norris' move on Oscar Piastri is a major talking point, as is Max Verstappen's title chances now being very much alive. Lance Stroll opens up on harsh F1 criticism. "I like to see it as just noise." Lance Stroll has revealed how he tunes out the criticism that comes with competing in F1, where he is often on the receiving end of severe negativity. Lance Stroll has shared how he handles the bright spotlight that comes with racing in F1, and what he does to counteract the harsh criticism he is often subject to. The Aston Martin driver is one of the most polarizing figures in the Formula One paddock. Now into his 9th season in the championship, whilst he has shown he is quick enough to compete in F1, he is considered by many to not be worthy of the seat he occupies at the Silverstone-based squad. Stroll has scored 3 podiums since his debut with Williams in 2017, becoming the second youngest driver in F1 history, behind Max Verstappen. to reach the rostrum at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix that year, and he took his maiden pole position at the Turkish Grand Prix in 2020. However, he has often struggled for consistency and comparatively to his teammates. Although he has spent time alongside multiple F1 drivers champions, Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, during his time at Aston Martin. But, as the son of team owner Lawrence Stroll, the young Canadian is an easy shot, with many arguing he is only still in